I'm Ralph McInerny, and I welcome you to the International Catholic University, and more particularly to a course in metaphysics. My colleagues and I, who are the participants and faculty of this electronic university, set about doing this because we wanted to make available in the most practical and inexpensive and widespread way the major elements of the Catholic patrimony, the great spiritual and intellectual heritage, which is ours as members of the Catholic faith. And in doing this, we have brought together any number of very distinguished people from various universities around the country. And furthermore, we have set up various tracks whereby one, by taking a series of courses, can earn sufficient credits to be awarded a master's degree either in philosophy or in theology. In the course we're starting on today, Metaphysics is a course, a systematic course in our sequence leading to a master's in philosophy. Not that you have to be aiming at that in order to profit from these talks, but it does have that further orientation for those who are so inclined. Metaphysics. I would, I suppose, be wise to tell you to rid your mind of all meanings and associations that that term might have for you. Particularly if you're acquainted with certain used bookstores, you'll find a section on metaphysics and spiritualism usually, and you'll find books on phrenology and various other exact sciences. This is not very helpful to understand what we're going to be doing in these meetings. No more, I suppose, would it be helpful to think of the so-called metaphysical poets and the round Earth's imagined corners and so forth. What we are going to be keying on is a work of Aristotle's called the Metaphysics, the source out of which this enterprise came in Western culture. The book of Aristotle, which is called the Metaphysics, was not so called by him. It was not entitled The Metaphysics by Aristotle, and there is a story, which may have some foundation in fact, that it received this name because the scrolls containing the 14 books of the Metaphysics were placed after the scrolls that contained his teaching on natural things, ta physika, so that the scrolls placed after them were called the metaphysica scroll, the metaphysical scroll. It's amusing, perhaps, that this word, this very polysyllabic and formidable word, had this origin in a cataloging arrangement. Whatever the truth of that, it is also true that it signifies that which is beyond the physical, that which is beyond the temporal. John Paul II, in his encyclical Fides et Ratio, in talking about the relationship between philosophy and the faith, urges philosophers to regain a sapiential dimension, and as he puts it in paragraph 83 of that encyclical, to get back a metaphysical range in what they are doing. He says, "Here I do not mean to speak of metaphysics in the sense of a specific school or a particular historical current of thought. I want only to state that reality and truth do transcend the factual and empirical, and to vindicate the human being's capacity to know this transcendent and metaphysical dimension in a way that is true and certain." The notion that the metaphysical takes us beyond the things of this world is an abiding implication of the term. And when the Holy Father speaks of its sapiential dimension, he's reminding us, as he does earlier in that encyclical, Fides et Ratio, Faith and Reason, that both religion, Christianity, and philosophy address themselves to huge ranging questions. What does it all mean? What is the point of human life? Is there life after death? What should I do? And so on. These questions, which are inescapable for any human being, and which are, of course, addressed and answered by Christianity, were raised by the pagan philosophers. And they continue to be raised by us, believers and non-believers, because it's just part of what it is to be a human being, to ask those questions in a philosophical fashion. That is, what answers could we give to them if we didn't have the answers of faith, and given two sets of answers, how do they relate to one another, and so forth. At any rate, we are setting out now to talk about the Metaphysics of Aristotle. It is a book, a work which is divided into 14 books, long chapters, I suppose we would say. The Greek text makes a small book of this size. This is one of those books that professional philosophers all but commit to memory. There are certain philosophers that every philosopher has to know, in peril of being called illiterate in his field. And Aristotle is one of them, and certain works of Aristotle loom larger than others. The Metaphysics of Aristotle is certainly one of those works. It begins with a sentence which is quoted by the Holy Father in that encyclical that I've mentioned. All men by nature desire to know. All men by nature desire to know. This is the motto, we might say. This is the headline under which the metaphysics is written. Now, you and I may know people to whom we think that generality doesn't apply. Some of our relatives might not seem to us driven towards the pursuit of knowledge. So we read on, and Aristotle immediately cashes in that claim in a way that makes it self-evident. He says the sign that all men by nature desire to know is the delight we take in our senses. For even apart from their usefulness, they are love for themselves, and above all others, the sense of sight. The pursuit of knowledge, the desire for knowledge, is exemplified first of all in our senses, the five senses, listening, hearing, tasting, and so forth. How could one be a human being without pursuing the lead of the quest that is involved in those capacities? What Aristotle will now do, and I'm thinking now of the opening three books of the Metaphysics. I want just to bring those to your attention because they give us a sense of at once the panorama of philosophy and metaphysics as the culminating inquiry. So we're embarking here on the ultimate and culminating inquiry of philosophical research in metaphysics. The term philosophy, as we know, means love of wisdom. And the quest for wisdom, the trek, the kind of phenomenological panorama through which we go, moving from senses, from our senses, through our internal senses and so forth, on to knowledge of the divine, in which, as Aristotle will argue, wisdom consists. This is the itinerary, this is the trajectory of philosophy. And if Aristotle is right, it's simply a portrait of what it is to be a human being. We as human beings are made to seek knowledge and truth about the world in which we live. The panorama that we find here at the opening of the Metaphysics then proceeds in this way. Aristotle says all men by nature desire to know. A sign of this is the delight that we take in our senses, particularly the sense of sight, which makes many differences among things apparent to us. And then he talks about memory. There are some animals that have not only external senses, but they have memory as well. And memory is the basis of teachability. Memory is also the basis for what Aristotle calls experience. That is the kind of know-how that individuals can have in a particular area. They're able to accomplish a particular task. They have the experience, but they may not have the art or the knowledge in this sense that if you ask, why are you doing it that way, they wouldn't be able to give us an abstract explanation of it, although they would be able to perform the task and to perform it well. But they have, let us say, the know-how, but not the know-why. And Aristotle suggests that we tend to rank higher someone who is able to explain and teach and not simply to do and to show. Once he has